All right, good afternoon and welcome to this talk about the business model of your adversary. We are day 2 of CyberSec Europe, the afternoon session. Congratulations for making it to this room. I know it is not always easy to get here. I'm a long-term visitor of CyberSec Europe, and it's an intense conference if you spend a lot of time here talking to people and to the different vendors that are here. I'm going to have a short presentation here, half an hour with a short subject that is close to heart for me, something that many of my clients have discussed when they asked about how to prioritize their cybersecurity efforts. They discussed how can they actually know what to prioritize and what is worth doing and not. And quite some people they spoke to said it's difficult to put into money how you should prioritize cybersecurity, and that is definitely not easy, but in some cases we can. And I'd love to talk to you here today for half an hour about an approach how you can prioritize your cybersecurity efforts by also taking into account an angle that's often forgotten, the economic angle. Short intro on me. My name is Michiel Lemmens, Belgian by origin, nationality, and where I was raised. Dutch speaking originally, but also speak English and French. Today I will be speaking in English to you. Spent 10 years in cybersecurity, many of which in offensive operations, basically hacking things, breaking things, and making them more secure that way. Also spent some time in high security environments, which have their own needs when it comes to cybersecurity. And the reason I am here with you today is I am also an instructor for SANS Institute in the Offensive Ops curriculum. I teach the Advanced Pen Testing Exploit Writing courses and the Hacker Tools and Techniques courses at SANS. By the way, if you prefer to have someone who speaks French or Dutch as your instructor, look at the SANS curriculum website. You'll see when I teach, I'll happily accommodate your English, your French, and your Dutch whenever you want to ask questions, etc. Some people prefer to be able to talk in their native language. It's more pleasant. In my free time, I like to make myself dirty on a motorbike, which is sort of just a fun fact to put in between here. I'm also a human being, as you can see, having fun and getting dirty on a motorbike. But that's not something we'll be discussing here today. That's not the subject of the talk. My clients are often confronted with adversaries that try to deploy ransomware in their environments. Some of my clients have cyber espionage actors that try to attack them. And there are many ways of looking at that relationship between a victim and an adversary. But I would argue there is big value to be found in looking at it also from a business point of view. Many adversaries can be approached in a business kind of way. You can look at the relationship from business to business and see how you can deal with them more effectively, even if you are a victim and they are oftentimes a criminal actor. Before we talk about the threat actor's business model, do you know in the organization you work, and I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands, I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed, but have a think for a second, what your organization that you work for's business model is. How does it make money? If you're in management, there's a big chance you're pretty familiar with that. If you're in a technical profile, it's good to also realize how your organization makes money, because that's also what you are defending as a cybersecurity professional. You try to make sure that your organization doesn't lose money because threat actors are in the way. Small graph from one of my clients, anonymized for their protection, of course, who had a revenue stream of 106 million a year, 26 of which was EBITDA, earning before investment, taxes, depreciation, amortization. I'm not going to have too much of finance talk here today, but just see it as a sort of a profit before you invest and pay taxes. And they had a cash reserve of 12 million. It's good for them to realize that if they're hit by a cyber attack, they're going to have to pay their costs still, because your employees still have to get paid, your contracts with AWS and Microsoft, etc., still have to get paid, and they will have to pay that in the meantime from their cash reserves. So basically, if this organization is hit by a cyber attack that debilitates it for 2 months, they'll not be able to cover the costs because they'll have burned through their cash reserves. Okay? My client greatly loved having this graph, which their finance department made at my request. But it's good to remember, when are you able to say, okay, now we are ready for a cyber attack, we can solve it in 2 months. Yeah, but if you burn through your cash in 1.5 months, technically you might be fantastic, but financially you'll be bankrupt 2 weeks before you're done recovering. So looking at it from the business point of view greatly helps in realizing what it is we are protecting. Now, the business model of competitors is one that is often analyzed by your business department. If you're in a sales position or you're in a higher level management position, you will probably have at some point compared the services or products you offer to those of competitors. There's a bunch of frameworks to use for that. There's a SWOT analysis, which you probably know from some sort of education. Many university education offer this at some point when they discuss business. A bit less known but very powerful is the Porter's 5 forces, where you assess basically what the power is of suppliers in the markets, the power of the buyers, how easily can you be substituted for a different kind of product that reaches the same results, how much competition is there. The retail sector in Belgium is very competitive. Deleuze, Colruyt, Aldi, they're constantly trying to capture each other's clients, although they serve slightly different audiences. What is the risk of a new entrant in the market? We see that Tesla is greatly suffering from BYD coming in and starting to sell Chinese electric vehicles in Europe. That didn't used to be the case, it is now. So that's basically Porter's 5 forces. You can do benchmarking, strategic group analysis, basically grouping competitors together in sort of on 2 axes. And there's the blue ocean strategy, which says that you should not go where your competitors are, go where there are no competitors, and then you will have a blue ocean where you can fish for as much fish as you want. Just the background here, how competitors are analyzed in business. It's not something that we'll use to compare our adversaries and to look at our adversaries from the business point of view, but we do have to keep in mind that there are a couple of metrics that we can use to look at our adversaries from the business point of view. And these are the ones that I list for you here. This is an arbitrary choice, but it's the one I use when I talk to my clients, and they've gotten great value out of this. A couple of axes on which your adversary is going to be different from other adversaries when you look at what a threat it is to you. What is the intent of the adversary? The intent of a cyber espionage group is wholly different from a ransomware group, or from a hacktivist group, or from a disgruntled insider. They want to achieve completely different things. What is the budget of your threat actor? A disgruntled insider probably doesn't have millions of budget. But a cyber espionage group has billions with a B as a budget. Completely different, and is going to change how you look at your defenses. What timeline can your threat actor support? A disgruntled insider is angry because they missed a promotion. Probably they want to get vengeance somewhere in the couple of months that come, not in 15 years. Cyber espionage groups will happily do operations that take decades to run. There have been examples of operations that have ran for decades until they were uncovered. Lastly, capabilities. It's not just how much money you have and how much time you have and what you try to achieve, but what are you able to do? A disgruntled insider is not going to write a kernel exploit for Windows, probably, unless they're in cybersecurity. They might, but that's a fringe case already, because most of your employees probably don't work in cybersec. But a cyber espionage group will not have any trouble writing a Windows kernel exploit. Okay? Now, why do we need this model? Everything's good in cybersecurity land, right? Nobody's getting hacked. Everybody has fantastic computer systems nobody gets into. I think we can all agree that's not the case. Of the organizations that were requested to respond by Veeam and by Sophos in 2023, 3/4 of the organizations suffered a ransomware attempt, meaning someone tries to deploy ransomware. We see something coming in to our organization which is flagged as ransomware, at the very least. Of those organizations that had an attempt that came in again 3/4 of the cases, there was successful encryption of something. Not necessarily the entire organization, not necessarily debilitating, but encryption nonetheless. If you combine those two statistics together, that basically means that in 57% of the organizations, ransomware actors managed to encrypt something that the victim organization did not want to have encrypted. That's a whole of a lot, okay? Ransomware actors are galore. There's a lot of them out there, and they achieve their goals quite easily. I would be highly interested in seeing numbers about cyber espionage, but of course those are not very readily available, because usually that's kept secret. It's state against state espionage groups. But There are quite some organizations hit by ransomware today, and it shows that we can only benefit from an extra approach to looking at the threat actors. Let me skip this one because this is from a bigger presentation, and it takes me 2 hours to explain everything in the presentation, so let me skip over this one. And let's just look at the cybercrime groups here for a second. Cybercrime defined, as we all know it, trying to obtain financial gain through cyber attacks, right? That's the definition of a cybercrime group. I'm going to focus for a second on a subset, the biggest subset being ransomware groups. There's also those who try to steal credit card information, but in the interest of time, let's skip over those for a second. Their intent is very clear. Make as much money as quickly as possible. Just get their Lamborghini. That's what they want to do. That's what a ransomware group wants to do. It's a business. They want to make money. It's very simple and very plain. Okay? Doesn't really matter to them how they make it. They might have moral standards. I don't know. I'm not too intimate with ransomware groups' inner sufferings, but they might have moral standards. Perhaps they don't attack medical equipment or something. I don't know. But they want to make money. If we look at the capabilities side here, the second angle, if we just look at initial access, again in the interest of time, the initial access for ransomware groups, again, Sophos and Veeam report 2023-2024, 36% started with an exploited vulnerability, a web-exposed service or item that was not patched and exploited. 31% came from email or other phishing, LinkedIn phishing, WhatsApp phishing, Teams phishing, 31%. 29% from compromised credentials, credential leaks, which could then be used to log into your systems as well, because the passwords were, of course, not unique. That leaves about 4% left for other kinds of attacks, which include password brute forcing. That's their capabilities to get in. This is what they use. If we all start solving these problems that I mentioned here, they'll change tactics, of course. That's what they'll do. They'll adapt to the situation. Right now, this is what the numbers say. And this can help you greatly as an organization to defend against them. Timeline they have? Well, the dwell time, meaning the time between initial access into your environment and starting to encrypt files, detonating the ransomware, 5 to 9 days, 10 to 15 days. You find different sources saying different numbers. That doesn't matter. The order of magnitude is important here. Days, weeks perhaps, not years. They will not wait for years before they start exploding things. So if you get a notification from your EDR or from your SOC saying there's possible ransomware initial access somewhere, you better hurry up, because they're not going to wait 2 months to detonate their stuff. The budget we'll discuss in a second. By the way, free tips here. I don't do free consulting, but I'll happily do it here. You want to do it for the initial access, avoiding exploiting vulnerabilities, reduce the attack surface, disable services you don't need, put them behind firewalls. Patch everything early and patch everything. Don't forget the stuff that you forgot about. Scan for things that you don't realize you have. Scan your own IPs, find services and patch them. If you don't need it, disable that stuff. And please, please put everything behind a firewall. I had a client I arrived with who had RDP exposed to the internet on a public IP. We're 2025. This is not supposed to happen anymore. RDP is not something you expose to the internet. Put it behind a firewall, secure it. Deploy Windows Defender Application Control or another application limitation enforcement. Deploy an EDR solution, and for the credentials, deploy multi-factor authentication. This is credential reuse we have here, compromised credentials. It's not brute forcing, it's reuse of credentials. MFA will make that a whole of a lot more difficult. Okay? Free consulting. Ransomware actors, they go where the effort they have to do is low and the profit is high. Whichever combination of the two works best for them. Wherever they get an initial access, the easiest client will get pwned first. They might also look at the profit to be made, in the sense that how much ransom will you pay, but this is where they will go. Now, budget. There was a fourth element to my analysis, which was budget. We had capabilities, intent, timeline, and budget. This is from the same report, Sophos State of Ransomware, where the mean or the median, doesn't matter which metric you take, of ransomware payments based on, and it's probably pretty small to read at the bottom, it's based on the market, the victim revenue per year, annual revenue per year of the company. And you see that there's a climbing line, if you will, although it's logarithmic, a climbing line in how much ransom is asked. Well, ransomware actors, if I was one, I would definitely ask more ransom from a company that makes more money. Why wouldn't I? Because I blocked their services for 2 weeks. Well, it's going to cost more to the bigger company than to the smaller one. So I would ask a bigger ransom. But we can easily see here that the ransom is between 145 and 3 million. 145,000 and 3 million. Let's take those numbers as given. Might be a bit more, might be a bit less. Let's draw this into a very, very concrete example that might be applicable in your organization if you have a Windows Active Directory domain. Kerber roasting. Again, I have 30 minutes here. This takes me half an hour to explain. Kerber roasting, basically, you can obtain, for certain accounts and certain configurations, you can obtain offline crackable key material, which you can take offline and crack in a CPU, GPU, mostly heavy environment. You can crack the password for that account, obtain the clear text password. It's very simple to deploy because you only need to request one service ticket and then you try to crack it offline. Kerber roasting attack, combined with a password policy that you see quite often in organizations where a password needs to be 8 characters and 3 out of 4 of the lowercase, uppercase digit special. Very common policy to see. Thankfully, Microsoft finally upped that from 8 to 12 or 14 in their advisories, thankfully. But many organizations still have 8-character passwords. You might have it in your organization. If I can request a service ticket that's Kerber roastable, and you used RC4 encryption, it's costing me $4,200 US in Amazon credits or in Google Cloud credit or in Azure credits to crack that credential, to try all 8-character passwords. If your password is 8 characters, I can request a service ticket, $4,200 to crack that password and escalate to domain admin, for example, because the Kerber roastable accounts are often service accounts, often privileged accounts. If you don't have RC4 enabled, the old encryption, and you have only AES enabled, let me try to do it, AES enabled, it will cost me 6.3 million to try all those 8-character passwords possible for that credential. Okay, so 4,000 versus 6 million. For, remember from the previous slide, a ransomware actor that will make between 100K and 3 million. They're not going to spend 6 million trying to crack that credential. So again, free consulting. If you have service tickets that you need that have to be Kerber roastable, that have to have an SPN set, and you need to have that in your environment, disable RC4, unless you have Windows XP systems in your environment or older. Which, to be honest, is a bigger problem, right? I mean, Windows XP 2003, right? I was not in college yet when that came out. And I'm not that young, so 100K to 3 million, your ransomware actor will not spend 6 million cracking that. This is how you can think about the budget of the ransomware actor versus your capabilities. You have to have RC4 because you have some sort of weird Linux implementation of a funky Kerberos implementation in a Linux library or Java library. They sometimes have that too. Make that password 16 characters. Every character you add to the password length adds 2 zeros to my cracking price here. 2 zeros. So that's 420,000 then. So add the length of the password. That's how you can price yourself out of that victim market. Make sure the adversary doesn't want to hack you because you are too expensive to them. You will cost them too much in AWS credits. Hacktivism. Those who want to achieve political goals through cyber attacks. Usually this means defacing websites and putting a political poster up. That's the kind of thing that usually is associated with hacktivism. It's also comparable to tearing down a poster, because that's basically what hacktivists do. They tear down your website, well, they take down a poster. This is what ChatGPT generates when you say, make me an image of tearing down a poster. I think it's very kind, because I would be more scratchy and violent, but that's just me. Their goal, cause embarrassment to you, because, hey, we could hack them, and spread a political message. That's basically the two things they love doing. Timelines, sometimes short, sometimes long, depends a bit on what their background is. They can be state-sponsored, then the timelines usually are longer because it's a political message you're pushing. Budget's usually not that big because the impact is limited here. If I was a state-sponsored cyber threat actor, I would not spend too much on hacktivism. It's just too expensive. Again, free consulting. How do you solve that? If you don't need your website hosted in your own environment because it's not linked to a backend, put it on AWS. Have them crack that. Who cares? It's not your infrastructure going down then. And if you need to have it in your own environment, or if it's externally even, have your takedown plan ready so you can get your website brought down quickly. So you don't have to wait for, I don't know, oh, Freddie's in holiday for 2 weeks now, so we'll do it in 2 weeks. No. How do we bring it down now so we can then remove the issue? Remove the DNS record, for example, can be sufficient to just do away with the problem. Activism is all about dropping a message for as long as possible. It's message times time. Break one of the two or break both. Remove the message they put there and especially take down the time that their message is up, and you break their appetite to hack you. Cyber espionage, I'm going to lump it together again in the interest of time with cyber warfare because their techniques are often comparable. You can lump them together up to a point. Their goals are different, but their techniques are comparable. The one is obtaining non-public information. The other is achieving military goals, destroying things, blowing things up, making things go boom. They're a whole different beast to fight. Many of them have zero-day skills. Chinese threat actors have consistently deployed 0 days against many different platforms like some of the Microsoft Cloud platforms, etc., demonstrating that it's not just a one-off, they're definitely through the 0-day ceiling. And if they are not able to do it, they can buy it. They can buy 0 days off the market. There's a gray and a black market for that. They can buy it. There's a legal and illegal and semi-legal market for it. Stealth is often important for them. First of all, because cyber espionage is generally a secretive thing, because they'd rather you not know that they're there. Also, because burning 0 days is expensive. Very, very, very expensive. The 0 days that these kind of threat actors usually use are upwards of a million up to tens of millions sometimes, depending on what it is and how stable it is. They have a very long timeline because they are funded by a very big budget. That budget is also oftentimes not a constraint for them because they can just keep spending, and they'll happily have a C2 channel that pings up once every month. That's enough. We can wait a month. Why not? Finding out budgets of cyber espionage actors is difficult because that is often classified. But the NSA, National Security Agency's budget of 2013 that was disclosed was 12 billion, I think. Billion with a B. Then there's DoD spending on cyber. Then there's CIA spending on cyber. There's CISA spending on cyber. There's DARPA spending on cyber, which is outside the DoD budget for a weird reason. Millions, billions is spent on cyber, not all on offense, but a lot of it is. Many of it on defense as well. The Volkskrant issued, a Dutch newspaper issued an article earlier this year explaining that the Stuxnet attack, you may remember the thing that made the Iranian nuclear centrifuges go boom in 2010, I think, cost about $1 to $2 billion US, according to an insider who was involved in the managerial part of the program. $1 to $2 billion for one attack, albeit quite successful up to a point, but $1 billion. Stuxnet was found 15 years ago, 2010, it was discovered. Development probably started 2005, 2007. Some say with quite some degrees of certainty that it would be the Americans and the Israelis who did it, along with the Dutch. I don't know, I was not involved. Belgians were not involved, or I was not involved, or I was involved and I cannot talk about it, it doesn't matter. But it's 15 years ago, 1 to 2 billion. I have some clients for whom cyber espionage is a threat actor. I mean, I can imagine that Colruyt and Deleuze in Belgium, the grocery retailers, they have a lot of threat actors they worry about, perhaps not cyber espionage. I have clients who do have this as an issue, and I hate to use exaggerations, and that is why, for me, it carries a lot of weight when I say this. These cyber espionage threat actors, and up to a point cyber warfare, are the most sophisticated attackers and the most well-resourced, the most well-funded attackers that the world has ever seen, okay? It's as clear as that. They're the best attackers, they have the most time and the most money, okay? But they are not invisible. They do not have Harry Potter's invisibility cloak. They are not sitting in the corner of the room here today. They are not invisible. Yes, they are very good at stealth, but there are moments in time when you can see them, okay? Google Project Zero, at the instigation of Google's threat analysis group, TAG, issued a report in 2023 on a 0-day that was used in a chain of exploits against a mobile device, Android mobile device. And the 0-day is this one, CVE 2023-26083, very beautiful Android kernel exploit that abuses the Mali GPU driver, which had an issue there, which led to an arbitrary write, which almost always is successful in achieving code execution. Google Project Zero analyzed the, Google Threat Analysis Group analyzed the phone and found crash dumps that contained exploitation attempts, logs that were very weird. Hey, the kernel has an issue here, and it manages to solve it, otherwise the device would have crashed. But what's going on here? Started looking at it, started pulling on the thread, and they ended up with an exploit chain with no less than 3, I think, 0 days that they found used by cyber espionage tool in a cyber espionage attack. System logs is one of the things, again, free consulting, that could, in certain situations, give away the kind of attack like 0-day attacks. But you have to monitor the logs to find out. Let me check I have all the time I need. So let me give you a small demo here. This is from our SEC 660 course from SANS, Advanced Pen Testing. And this is from the exploit writing part of the course. And on the Linux parts, at the end of day 4, if you're still fresh enough, then we will, can I have my mouse? Oh, let me check for a second. My mouse doesn't like that I'm presenting. Let me clear the logs here for a second. No, I don't have a mouse. Let me full screen it. Always great when live demos work, right? I think the machine's frozen up. Let me just reset the machine. And in the meantime, let me show you the next slide, and I'll come to my machine. This is an exploit I was writing a while ago, which involved some heap spraying. And the exploit was successful 1 in 7, 1 in 8 times. Depended a bit on the machine and on the success rate due to environment factors. I got a 1 in 7, 1 in 8. I could manage to get a shell out of it. Meaning also, if I do 8 attempts and 1 is successful, there are 7 attempts that are not successful. 7 attempts that are not successful that lead to journal logs terminated abnormally with signal SIG-SEV. That's all good and well to have a SIG-SEV from time to time. Is not abnormal. Applications crash. They don't have to be exploited to crash. They can also just be badly written to crash, for example. Or something weird might happen to the computer. You unplug a USB drive while something's going on there, you might get weird errors on Linux. Who knows? But to have 7 million of those in your logs, that's weird. That's not supposed to happen. Let me see if my Ubuntu is more responsive today. Looks already a bit better. During 660, one of the things we do is at some point you have ASLR enabled on your system, address space layout randomization, which moves modules in memory every run of the program to make sure it's not easy to guess the return address. There are a couple of ways to get around that, but one of the ways that we teach you in the course is the following one. Let me first clear out the logs here. That's the wrong password. Oh. Caps lock was enabled, doesn't help. I'm going to look in my logs for seg faults. Currently there are none because nothing has run yet and I just cleared the logs. No window. Blow this up a bit and then I'll shrink it again. There we go. Just to make clear, who am I? I'm just a regular user dead list who doesn't have access to Etsy Shadow. I'm not a privileged user. The exploit we run here in this exercise tries to brute force ASLR. But look what happens at the bottom when I look for seg faults. 7 billion seg faults there. Isn't that weird if you're looking at the logs? If you look at what the exploit does on top on the meantime, It tries to guess the correct return pointer. It's brute forcing now. You will find it usually in like 2,000, 3,000 attempts. Doesn't really matter. It's not the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation is the bottom pane. If you have 7,000 seg faults in your logs, that's definitely something to look at. Either there's shitty software running, or someone's trying to attack something. Another one I didn't put on the slide. If all of a sudden your machine goes to 100% RAM and stays there for 15 minutes, what's going on? Okay, you might have just opened Google Chrome. That's also possible, right? I don't know. You might have opened a Java application. How dare you? But if something goes to 100% RAM and stays there 15 minutes, and by the way, don't stick to 15 minutes. It can be 12 hours. That's weird. Have a look at that. 100% CPU for 15 minutes. Huh? What's going on? Disk is full. Probably your logs are overflowing somewhere, too much logs, fine. But what goes on there? You have to investigate that kind of stuff, and then you risk finding 0 days. Exactly how Google Project Zero, at the instigation of Google Threat Analysis Group, found those 0 days because crash dumps were available. The attackers didn't clean up their crash dumps, and so, well, there you go. By the way, if I stop my exploit attempt now, I cannot clean up the logs as an attacker. If I get a shell from this, then I can. I can just clear the logs and nobody will be any the wiser, unless it has already been transferred to a central logging system. But if I just let it run now and I get a shell, I can clear the logs. If it fails, then I can. And I can tell you from experience, exploits are not stable. People try them, they fail, they have to try them 10, 15 times before they work, change configurations, change return addresses, bigger knobs, smaller knobs, different return address. They're a hell, especially modern exploits have a lot of heap grooming to do. The one I showed you on the slide that I was working on, 1 in 8, that was after I did heap grooming. Before that, it was like 1 in 50, which is horrible. But it takes a lot of grooming and testing and trying, which all leaves logs in your systems. I don't know when it's going to succeed, by the way. It should succeed, but we'll see. Let's not stick around waiting too long because there's a presentation afterwards too. We'll come back to it in a second, see if we see anything else coming back. So, you want to defend against cyber espionage, as mentioned, look for memory corruption in your logs and check appliances for weird behavior. These are a couple of pointers, and I have dozens more, but I have 30 minutes, and I can only talk about so much here. Also, this is an open setting. Closed setting would be more appropriate there. The threat actors that purchase these things, well, some cyber research groups follow these purchases. Citizen Lab follows a whole bunch of things that happens on mobile devices. That might be interesting for you to look at if cyber espionage is a threat to you. The stealth, yeah, that's going to be a problem because they're not going to have a blatant Metasploit C2 channel. I'm not running 0 days through Metasploit. I'm not an idiot. But they will have to have at some point actions on target, which they can either yes or no instruct from the outside, and some sort of exfiltration of information to the outside. So that still happens. You can still look for that. You might not necessarily find the 0 day they use because if they clean up their logs, it's more difficult, but you might still find this. You might still find that, oh, we see that they have a regular level medium integrity shell on a Windows system. Then something happens that we don't see, and all of a sudden they're dumping Mimikatz memory. Well, then they escalate it. That's the only explanation. Did they use credentials? Did they use exploitation? Perhaps you have something to find. It's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. All right? You need a lot of power for this, a lot of people, a lot of good people and good resources. But it's possible. You can work with this. Still no shell. Understanding how your threat actor makes money or spends money, because cyber espionage, they have a budget and goals to achieve. That's almost like a business. It's just that they don't sell it. So you can still work with budgets and the goals. If you understand how they make their money, then you can understand how you can also make yourself a difficult victim. Kerber roasting, for example, or deploying app blocker and an EDR so that the initial payloads fail, that they deploy, and make them go elsewhere with their ransomware. Okay? That's all I have for you right now. I'll happily take questions. I think we have time. Otherwise, follow us to the SANS booth. It's just across the food court You'll be distracted by coffee and beer. Try to ignore it. And then if you just feel right, you come to the SANS booth, and I'll happily take your question there too as well. Yes, sir.
Do you know what is the typical profile of an adversary targeting the small and medium enterprise in Belgium, for instance, enterprise or business with less than 50? And we know that they represent, so SME in Belgium, 95%
Yeah.
of the business.
Yeah.
So do you know?
Yeah. So, do I know what a typical threat actor is that is confronting small and medium enterprises lower than 50 staff in Belgium? I would say, because it's 95% of the companies in Belgium, some of them are my clients, and usually the problem that they call me for is just after ransomware or during ransomware, which is usually ransomware actors. It depends a bit. There are also enterprises where 10 people work that work in such high tech that it's military tech. Then cyber espionage comes back onto the playing field because all of a sudden, but that depends on what the company does. And if they're mainly a non-sensitive company, if I can call it that way, not in the sense that they work in military or in development of technology that other states might be interested in, then the main concern, I would argue, is ransomware. And it's what I see that they complain about as the biggest problem they have, is attempts at ransomware, successful ransomware. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, time? Did I get my shell? I think I got my shell, by the way. Whoops. There we go. So, that was it for me. You can follow us to the SANS booth for a lot more of this. Otherwise, thank you very much.